Who put you in charge? That's what Bradley screamed at me, finger jabbing my chest in front of the entire second shift. Who put you in charge of anything? You've been coasting on this floor for 30 years because nobody had the spine to fire you. Consider that done today. 40 people stood there. Not one of them said a word. My name is Frank Doyle. I'm 58 years old, and for 31 years I managed the loading dock and maintenance crew at Harlow Logistics, a mid-sized warehouse outside Pittsburgh. I started at 27, a kid with a bad knee and a good work ethic, sweeping floors and stacking pallets on the night shift because that's the only job they had open. I worked my way up slowly, forklift operator, then crew lead, then floor supervisor, until the place practically ran on my schedule. New hires came and went, but I stayed, and over time I trained half the supervisors who eventually outranked me on paper, even though they still called me at midnight when something broke. Old man Harlow, the founder, used to walk the floor every morning with a cup of black coffee and shake my hand like I was a partner, not an employee. He trusted my judgment on everything from scheduling to safety to which trucking companies to drop. When he got sick, he told me, half joking, half not, that he wished his own son had half my sense. I should have known that joke would cost me something one day. Bradley took over when his father died. He was 31, fresh off a business degree, with a haircut that cost more than my first car payment and a habit of talking about synergy like it meant something you could touch. He'd never lifted a pallet in his life, never worked a double shift, never had grease under his fingernails. But he walked the floor like he'd built every inch of it with his own hands. For the first few months he mostly stayed in the office, reorganizing spreadsheets and renaming departments. Then the cost-cutting started. He slashed the maintenance budget, delayed equipment repairs, and signed off on shortcuts I'd specifically warned him against, Bay 4's emergency lighting being the worst of them. I put it in writing, dated and filed, because that's what you do when you've been around long enough to know paper outlives memory. The blow-up happened over a delayed shipment to one of our biggest clients, Cunningham Freight. That wasn't even my fault. A supplier delay upstream, nothing my crew could control. Bradley came storming out of his office with his phone in his hand like a weapon, demanding I follow him inside for a private word. I made the mistake of answering him on the floor instead, because I wanted my crew to hear the truth, not a rumor twisted by gossip later. That was the wrong move. That's when he humiliated me, loud enough to bounce off the steel rafters in front of everyone who'd ever called me boss. I packed 19 years of personal tools into a milk crate, wrenches, a level, a flashlight with my initials carved into the handle, and drove home in silence. My wife Sandra took one look at my face when I walked through the door and didn't ask a single question. She just put the kettle on and let me sit at the kitchen table until the shaking in my hands settled. I didn't plot anything dramatic that night or the next. I just sat with it, feeling 60 years old for the first time in my life, even though I had 2 years left to get there. I thought about all the early mornings, the holidays I'd worked, the years I'd given a building that didn't even remember my name once the owner's son decided I was disposable. But 30 years on that floor taught me more than how to run forklifts and fix conveyor belts. It taught me the paperwork nobody else wanted to touch: safety logs, insurance riders, fire code regulations, OSHA filings. I knew Bay 4's emergency lighting had failed 2 consecutive inspections and that Bradley had personally signed a deferred maintenance form against my written recommendation 8 months earlier, a recommendation I still had, dated, filed, and untouched in a folder in my garage. I knew the warehouse's insurance policy carried a clause that voided coverage for willful documented safety violations. And I knew the county fire marshal by name, because we'd golfed together twice and traded fishing stories at the lake every summer. I waited 4 days for my hands to stop shaking before I did anything at all. Then I mailed one plain envelope, my old memo, his signed form, nothing else inside. No letter, no accusation, no name attached, just documents left to speak entirely for themselves. 3 weeks later, the warehouse failed a surprise inspection. Bay 4 was shut down pending repairs. The insurance company, reviewing the claim history before renewal, found that same signed form and started asking very pointed questions about prior written warnings. Premiums tripled overnight. 2 weeks after that, the board, Three cousins who'd inherited shares and had been quietly waiting for an excuse voted to bring in an outside operations manager to stabilize the facility. I heard all of it from my old friend Carl over coffee, the way you hear a weather report, calm, factual, no drama in his voice. Bradley still had his title on the door, he just didn't have his keys to the safety office anymore, and he hadn't said, "I built this place," to anyone in over a month. I never told Carl what I'd mailed. I never will. I never lied to a single soul, and I never lifted a finger that wasn't already mine to lift. My own memo, my own warning, my own 31 years of doing the job right, while someone else did all the talking. Bradley wanted the world to believe nobody had put me in charge of anything. He just never noticed that the truth doesn't need anyone's permission to do its work. It only needs someone patient enough and tired enough of being underestimated to finally mail the envelope. These days I consult part-time for two smaller warehouses across town. They ask my opinion before they ignore it, and most days they don't ignore it at all. I like that arrangement just fine.